Less stress, more time, more money. Welcome to the Cash Flow Contractor. Interview.
What's up, Cash Flow Contractors? So excited to share this episode with Chris Edwards for you. It's a little bit different than most of our interviews. You know, a lot of times when we're talking to contractors, we're telling their story from being employed to then self-employed to then, becoming a manager and going through that evolution of a business owner that is starting in the trades and working their way into business. And this is a little bit of a flipped script. We've got Chris Edwards out in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and he has he has purchased a flooring company. And it's really cool to see his journey from corporate finance to now becoming a contractor. And it's a completely different perspective. And he's an incredible mind, an incredible financial person. And I think he's going to do a fantastic job. He already is doing a fantastic job as a contractor. So really unique conversation. It's going to help you to think about your business differently and approach it from more of the business finance side rather than the, tradesperson that's getting started in business and learning how to run an efficient business and maybe do some of the financial stuff. So hope that you enjoy it. And thanks for listening. Martin, what do you know about Colorado?
Healthiest state in the United States, by far.
Yeah, why do you say that?
Because I knew it, but I read an article in the last week, I think maybe in the Wall Street Journal, obesity and things like that, rates. And anyway, Colorado's the opposite of that, partly because native Coloradians have better genes, maybe, but partly because people who are attracted to outdoor living, whether you're rock climber, skier, bicyclist, trekker, whatever it is, people move there. So
yeah, it's true.
But it is, and you can see why.
Yeah. Well, we've got Chris Edwards with us, and Chris, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's we've met each other for about 2 minutes total, so this should be really fun. Now we're really happy to have you on, and you're in Colorado. I mistook it as northeastern Colorado, but you're northwestern. You're in Steamboat, is that right?
Yep, Steamboat Springs. Yep.
Awesome. And have you always been there?
No, I grew up outside of Boulder, and
Okay.
I went to college in Arizona in Tucson, and then I came back, lived in Boulder after college for a while, and then moved to Denver with my fiance most recently. And then about 2 years ago, we packed up and moved up to the mountains, and now we're in Steamboat.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, we're going to get into that in a little bit, but you went through quite the transformation. I'd love to share with our listeners just a little bit where you're at today. You own a flooring company and a granite company. Why don't you share a little bit about those companies?
Yeah, so I own one company called Affordable Flooring Warehouse. I acquired that business about a year and a half ago. And then most recently, I purchased a 50% ownership of a sort of sister company called Granite House, which is actually right next door and has a lot of adjacent qualities that were really attractive to me. It's got a lot of clientele overlap, and so now I'm operating two businesses. I'm acting as the de facto GM, so from measuring carpet jobs through billing through accounts payable. I'm kind of doing everything right now. So hopefully that changes over time. But right now I'm very much in the weeds and wearing a lot of different hats to make these two businesses go.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of different hats is maybe an understatement. But yeah, there's a lot that happens as an operator, and you're not the typical operator that we've spoken to on this podcast. A lot of the time we're talking to people that are going through what we call the evolution of a business owner, and typically that goes from maybe employee to self-employed to finally becoming a manager of people, and then becoming an owner that's able to step outside the business, and then maybe an investor that's able to use the cash flow to invest in other businesses, other assets, and then maybe into an entrepreneur that starts, multiple businesses and does the same thing over and over. And you've kind of approached it from a different trajectory. You started in corporate finance, is that correct?
Yeah, so I started my career in corporate finance, FP&A. So I started out at a company called Zayo Group, which was a roll-up of telecom assets at scale. That ultimately led to, at the time, the biggest IPO in Colorado history. So I was like a finance guy. I was in spreadsheets all day long, thinking about value creation through acquisitions. I was in investor relations. I was in product management for a stint. So I kind of did a lot of different things at that stop at Zayo. And then from there, I moved to the consulting world, and I worked at Slalom Consulting for about a year and a half. And then I most recently was at Deloitte Consulting for almost 2 years. And so yeah, I come from a corporate background, and in those two consulting stints, it was more focused on technology. So I did Salesforce.com implementation projects, and so I kind of have like that CRM, business process type of background. And then I, for better or worse, made a decision to jump into this crazy world.
Yeah. Well,
Why,
I'm sure
why
that's...
did you decide to step away from the corporate side of things into the weeds of operations, of being the man?
I think partly I'm a little bit out of my mind, I guess. No, I mean, so I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My dad was an entrepreneur. He did startups. He didn't do what I did. My mom was also had a corporate background. Then she went into entrepreneurship as well, and she actually sold her small business about a year ago. So there's that. Then there's also, during the pandemic, I was taking a look at my life. I looked around at the people that I was working for, like the partners at Deloitte, and it wasn't really like a lifestyle or a trajectory that I was super excited about. I could have stayed on the partner track. I could have had a really comfortable and nice life. I was doing well at Deloitte. It was a comfortable position, and I liked what I was doing, all things considered. But I've always had entrepreneurial aspirations, and I think the pandemic probably gave me the kick in the butt that I needed to, put up or shut up and go out and do it. At the same time, I also stumbled onto this entrepreneurship through acquisition world of, the thesis being that you buy an existing business that's cash flow positive, that has momentum, that clearly has product market fit, that's doing something right. And then from there, operate it, grow it. So that kind of came into my life. I did a lot of research and kind of thinking about whether that was a path that I wanted to go down. And so I came to the conclusion that I did want to go down that path. So I quit my job, and I did a search for about 3 months until I found this business, and ultimately, raised SBA debt, did the whole thing to close on it, buy it, and been operating it ever since.
Man, there's so much in there.
Yeah, there's a lot.
There's a lot in that short stint there. But no, as far as learning about the entrepreneurship through acquisition, where did you learn about that, and what was that process like? Was it over the course of years that you were following this, or where were you first introduced to it?
It was actually probably right around like sort of peak pandemic time, like summer 2020, and I found out about it through Twitter, honestly, just kind of stumbling across guys like Brent Beshore and Brandon Laffridge, Rich, I forget his last name, Rich Jordan. He bought a plumbing business. I just started hearing these like stories of young guys who were buying these small businesses that, no one else apparently was really attracted to. And there's just a lot of opportunity when you start to get into like the lower range of like SDE type of businesses. And so I kind of thought about it.
Would you define SDE real quick?
Yeah, sorry. Seller's discretionary earnings is basically the cash flow of the business.
Yeah.
So I started to hear these stories. I started to think about it, from my own perspective and background, I come from that Zayo stint where I saw a lot of value get created through acquisitions. The thought of buying a small business for a low multiple, being able to raise SBA debt so I didn't have to bring a ton of cash to the table, and then be cash flow positive day one was a thesis and a story that really attracted me in my sort of like FP&A, type of brain. And so I just kind of read about it, read a lot of books about it, thought about it from my own background, having been sort of exposed to small businesses through my parents and worked in small businesses in high school and middle school and college, and decided that I think given those sort of the mix of the skills that I had, that it was something I could pull off.
Would you would you define FP&A for listeners too?
Financial planning and analysis. So it's kind of like corporate,
Right.
forecasting of cash flow, and really like I would present presentations to our CEO with like, hey, here's what our product segment's going to do. Here's what I forecast. Here's why. So sort of like having that sort of macro and also micro financial planning and financial modeling skills.
Yeah. This is really fascinating. There's so much you've talked about. This could be 3 hours, but I have clients who've done a number of acquisitions, and we talk frequently about financial engineering is too much. It's a little less than that, but a financial world where you create value through financial maneuvering, let's say, and operations where you create value by selling things at a margin and making a profit. How did your experience in the financial side translate to you running an operation and actually making a profit, what a lot of our listeners would regard as a real profit? And they're both real, but
yeah. I mean, honestly, not a lot of overlap. That was one thing that I had to learn. I had to learn how to go out and sell a carpet job and make money doing it. That was a gap in my skill set for sure. I would say I probably learned more of like kind of sales through my consulting stint, where like you have to walk into a room and you have to command a certain level of respect and and I would say competency that people want to pay you for your time, and they want to listen to what you have to say about their own business, So that sort of consulting skill set definitely helped me with the transition for these two businesses. It was also like I got exposure to a lot of different businesses, so that I was able to like not be overwhelmed day one on what I needed to know and what I didn't need to know, if that makes sense. So like with consulting, you have to take a micro or a macro picture, but you have to also understand like what you need to know and don't need to know. And that helped me not get overwhelmed and not get too bogged down in the details. But sales wise, like operations wise, I had to learn. That was definitely something that like, and I'm still learning. It is not an easy thing to run a small business, and so it took time. I was very stressed the first year. Now that I'm like a year and a half into it, I'm a little more comfortable. But it's a steep learning curve to like go from something where you have a lot of security, a lot of people supporting you, to jumping into this entrepreneurial world where like it's sink or swim. And I mean, you are responsible for your own hide, and that can be a pretty steep learning curve.
It is a steep learning curve, and it impacts you more than just in your profession, but also on a personal level. What were some of the personal transformations that you went through coming out of, this corporate life and corporate stable job to now having the stress of you're the one that's responsible for anything and everything? What was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was really intense. I mean, just if you think about it, you have, like, my life was fairly tracked, right? Like, I was in school, I went to, I was in high school, I went to college, I did the corporate thing. Like, it's very much like linear. kind of like you're on a safe path. As long as you don't bang into the walls too much, you'll be okay. So you have to, for me, it was an exercise in faith. It was an exercise in humility that, I had to learn that I didn't know very much about this world. I had to grow. I had to lean on my wife, to to really get through this. I mean, there were times where I came home and just stared at the wall blankly because I was just so exhausted. I was so stressed. It's like, what have I done with my life? So it was it was very much like a moment where I had to take a risk. I had to be comfortable with that risk and learn learn that getting outside that sort of tracked life can be about. And it was extremely intense, but I'm glad I did it. Now that I'm kind of through the other side a little bit, I mean, I still have my days, but now that I'm through the transition and I've seen the cash flow play out, I've seen the P&L play out. We've been able to create value. Now I feel like I'm more comfortable. I'm more capable of doing something else in the future. So it was it was a personal. It was the most intense personal transformation I think I've ever gone through.
Yeah.
You have used the word value a number of times here. A lot of contractors listening to us think in terms of profit, okay? But you're using the word value. I created value. We created value. Can you delve into that just a little bit? Because that's an important distinction in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's kind of two ways to think about it. There's financial value and there's operational value, right? I mean, so on the financial side, I've paid down debt, I've grown revenue, we've expanded profit margins, all those things contribute to financial value creation, right? Which hopefully, if I were to go and sell this business, I would get, another turn of my SDE back, right? So if I bought it for 2x, maybe I can sell it for 3x now, right?
Okay.
So that's financial value, and that's kind of where that's where that FP&A type of mindset.
So
comes from.
you're talking about pricing at a multiple of SDE is seller discretionary earnings, which includes their salary, the net profit, some things like if you have a Cadillac Escalade that you don't really need, you can add that back in, right?
Right.
Maybe life insurance policies, maybe fewer board meetings in Honolulu. But
Exactly.
for our listeners, that's very fundamentally how businesses are valued. Some multiple times earnings as defined, right? Okay, so just wanted to clarify that for listeners.
Yeah, exactly. So if I bought it for $500,000 of SDE, and then I grow it to $750,000 of SDE, then you get a multiple on that additional $250K of SDE, right? And then let's say because you grew it that much, you get another turn of SDE. So you can, right? If you bought it for 2, now you sell it for 3. So 750 times 3 is 2.25 million.
225, yeah.
And if you bought it for 2 times 500K, you bought it for $1 million. You created 1.125 or 1.25 million, right? So
This is so huge for listeners because a lot of the vast majority don't even think about that, right?
Yeah.
And so everybody knows that you need to work to get profit up, and we'll see, maybe that's a bit much for this, but how do you get the multiple up? You get bigger is one way, but there are other things, right? So you bought it for 2 and you want to sell it for 4.
Right.
And if you double this SDE, it's 8 times it's 4 times as much.
Yeah. So, and that's where the kind of financial engineering and value creation can be pulled in different ways. But then the second thing was operational value creation. And for me, I walked into this business day one and it was paper all over the place. There was no real processes. I mean, it was just the whole thing was living in like the seller's head, right? I mean, he knew everything that was going on, but like as a new person walking in, it's like, dude, how do you operate this thing? This is madness, you know? And so, I was able to, implement a new system that we use for, tracking basically all of our internal operations, from purchasing to install management to internal documentation to lead funnel management. So that has created a lot of like operational value, in my mind. It made my life a lot easier. I'm able to track, everything that's going on with the business from a beach in Florida, and that wasn't able to be done before. So whether that's actually going to translate into financial, value creation, TBD, but from a value creation perspective as an operator, it's created a tremendous amount of value for me.
So let's dive a little bit deeper into that. That's your tech stack, and we've talked about this several times with our listeners. I know that, and we'll go back to Twitter a little bit, but I know you've mentioned Notion. Is that what you're referring to for your tech stack, is using Notion?
Yeah, exactly. Notion, a couple other things, but Notion has become sort of like our central hub for all of our internal operations.
And you come from this background of even doing Salesforce, which is more enterprise than small bits. I mean, it does everything, but we'll just say for all intents and purposes, it's more enterprise level software. What was your decision to use Notion, and what are some of those other tools you use, and how did you decide what your tech stack was going to be?
Yeah, so I mean, I had never even heard about Notion, but I was introduced to it sort of through a friend of a friend, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, wow, this is really cool. And just kind of having that CRM type of background, I kind of viewed it as a like Salesforce light. Like to your point, like a small business like this one doesn't need Salesforce.com. It's just too much. But Notion kind of was a really good middle step between that and nothing. And so I just kind of reviewed it. I kind of got my hands dirty with it, and I just came to the conclusion that this is a really powerful tool for SMBs to leverage if done thoughtfully. It's flexible but robust enough to meet a lot of SMB use cases, and so I just went all in. I was like, this is awesome. I'm gonna just build our entire internal operations on this platform. So today, like our warehouse operations uses it, our front desk uses it for sales. I use it for my accounts payable, my accounts receivable, and it really has transformed the way that this business has operated. And it's very customized, and it took time to build, but if you do it thoughtfully and you do it creatively, the use cases for Notion for SMBs I believe are vast, and it's an underutilized tool for a lot of SMBs.
Yeah, I think the key phrase there is if done thoughtfully. I think Notion is incredible, and especially with your background, it's like the perfect fit because you can manipulate it however you want to fit whatever process, and it's kind of that all-in-one tool almost. Yep. But if done thoughtfully, I think the majority of the contractors out there that don't have a background in tech may find that they don't know how to do it thoughtfully,
sure.
Where they may need a consultant. What are the other tools that you're integrating maybe with Notion or using outside of Notion?
So we use a tool called RFMS. It's kind of like an ERP tool that we use for all of our inventory. It's specific to retail flooring businesses.
Okay.
So we use it for like all of our carpet inventory or, LVT, wood inventory, stuff like that. And then we've kind of gone heavier on using the Google, suite for documentation and whatnot. But really Notion has been the sort of key driver for change for the business.
That's great.
How do you keep books? Does Notion do that? Or you use QuickBooks or some variant?
Yeah, we use QuickBooks. So I use QuickBooks, and but I use Notion's data to inform the entries that I make into QuickBooks. So for a business like ours, we have a lot of accounts payable, a lot of accounts receivable. I kind of use Notion as like a way of tracking the cash flow of the business, and then we'll plug that in manually into QuickBooks to kind of get a more holistic view of my financials.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, we always talk about tech stacks, and I think in your case, with your background, the flexibility of Notion makes a ton of sense, and it can make a lot of sense for a lot of contractors that have that background. But if not, something a little more rigid will help you almost define your systems for you, because you have to have a really good grip on your systems and your operations, and then you have to be able to actually implement it in a thoughtful way to where it scales without you. Because in a sense, Notion could also just become your mind, just like it was the business owner before you's mind that had all the details. But I know that you've definitely done it in a thoughtful way with your background. I want to go back to Twitter. So you found out about entrepreneurship through acquisition through Twitter, and you've also decided to kind of build in public. That's how I found out about you and invited you on here. How has building in public on Twitter, why did you do that? What was that decision like? And how has it shaped your journey from corporate life to SMB so far?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that Twitter has, first of all, Twitter, I got so much value out of hearing these guys' stories on Twitter that I wanted to contribute. I wanted to, share my story, as, mundane as it might seem. I just wanted to contribute to the sort of SMB ecosystem, just share what I've done, and through that I've gained a huge, I've really grown my network by contributing to Twitter. I've met a lot of really smart people in real life. I have made friends. I have talked to people that have supported me through the transition. I've talked to people that have just given me a shoulder to cry on, during some of the rough days. So Twitter it's just an awesome community of, young hustlers that are out there making things happen, that are, creating wealth for their families, and doing it in a way that is, I think for a lot of people, a little bit unique. Most people don't think about buying a plumbing business as a way of creating wealth, right? It's just not something that we're taught. It's not something that we're taught when we go through school, that you go to school so you don't become a plumber, right? And that you get away from these types of trades businesses. So I think that sharing my story hopefully gives some people a data point to look at and say, hey, maybe I shouldn't try to just go climb the corporate ladder for another 10 years. Maybe there is other opportunities out there that I never thought about before. So I should probably contribute more. I've been a little bit, I haven't written as much lately, but I think that it's a great way to meet people. It's a great way to expand other opportunities for yourself, and also just hopefully help some other people with their decision making in their career.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the value of that network, and it's so valuable. And I think oftentimes, and Martin's probably in this bunch, but there's a lot of people that think of Twitter and they're like, oh, people are, just talking about politics or tweeting what they had for breakfast or whatever. But the reality is there is so much value, and there's not just in the network, but also in the content that's available through SMB Twitter or real estate Twitter, or whatever. I mean, you can find so many different communities on there, and it's really cool to see. So I think it's been great to follow your journey a little bit. I want to go and talk about one of the tweets you had, and you're probably not going to remember this, or maybe you do. About a year ago, I want to say, you talked about you were doing due diligence, and it was pretty clear, hey, there's the demand. Why don't we just hire more installers? And Martin and I were actually talking about this because we have a mutual client who's a surfaces company. They do countertops. They'll do some high-end floors, people that want to put quartz on their floor. But yeah, they, why is that a bad thought to just, we'll hire more installers and then we'll grow that way? I think we know the answer, but I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. So I think there's a couple unique things about my business that is worth calling out. The first is that it is in Northwest Colorado, so like it's geographically isolated. I don't exactly have like a pool of, potential installers like I would if I lived in Denver, right? So like just growing like that is not going to be something that really fits the business model that I have. And the second thing is like my, the installers are loyal to us and we need to be loyal to them. They work really hard. We have a great installation team that have been here for, 5+ years, some of them almost 10 years. And if I were to just, give Johnny come lately the big carpet job that should be going to the other guy that's been here for 10 years, that creates distrust. It creates, hey, like maybe like if they're not loyal to me, maybe I should go to the carpet shop down the street and give them my labor. So it's a very delicate balance you have to strike with, growing your business, but also not doing it to the detriment of the people that helped you get to where you are. So you have to, like I said, strike that balance. You have to make sure that you are, feeding the guys that are doing a great job for you, that your growth is their growth. So kind of what's happened is, now that we've grown the business, we have more jobs and we're busier, they're able to hire another helper so that instead of doing 120 yards per day of carpet, they can do 160, instead of doing, 500 square feet of LVT in one day, they can now do 750. So, and they make money off of that, right? So having our growth be their growth and having that sort of a symbiotic relationship continue to thrive.
Yeah. But they are actually independent contractors.
The installers are, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So do they work exclusively for you?
Yeah. I mean, every now and then they might go do something else, but no, they're basically 100% exclusive to us.
And do you pay them on a set piece basis, so much a yard, so much a square foot, or?
Yeah, they basically
in essence bid to you? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, basically they show up every morning. We give them a work order that outlines, you're doing 120 yards of carpet, carpet removal, and then they go to the job and they go do it. So that's sort of the
for a fixed per unit price,
right?
Not just by the hour. Okay,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
You are in a unique market, and I listened to your podcast that you did a few months ago on Owned and Operated with John Wilson, and I think that I want to talk about the vision you have for growing your company, but also just your vision for acquiring businesses and being an entrepreneur, because you are in a unique space. There's not necessarily going to be like this metropolitan boom inside of Steamboat going forward, and that makes it difficult to grow a business in some sense because you're constrained by your market. What is the vision for your businesses inside of Northwest Colorado, and how do you plan on continuing to grow and acquire, or is it just kind of creating a really streamlined cash flowing business that is comfortable?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and I don't probably have the answer that I should for you. I mean, I would say that
that's okay.
I would say that right now the focus is just to continue to make this as profitable of an endeavor as possible. Like right now, I don't see us tripling our business, in the next 2 years or whatever. I mean, that could change, and there could be new opportunities that emerge, but I think that being sort of the preeminent flooring and countertop business in Steamboat Springs, Northwest Colorado, is a good enough endeavor for me right now. I don't think that this is going to be something that scales to a level where I'm like 5x where I am right now. And again, like that could change, but I don't really see it that way. I see it potentially like, make this thing as hum as best as it can, and then go find something else that, is adjacent to it or complementary to it, and, go execute on that as well. So, it's not really like a growth play where there's like, where the scalability is like more or less infinite. It's not, and it's, so really it's going to be, my vision is to just continue to have this be as good of a business as we can. And we have grown it. I mean, we've grown it about 35% since I acquired it. So, that's still healthy growth. And, but I don't think that this is going to be something where I'm trying to like take over, the entire western slope of Colorado, right? I'm not going to like move south to Grand Junction or to like Pueblo or something. It's going to be something that probably remains geographically focused, execute on it really well, and then if there's other opportunities that are adjacent to it, then expand to theirs in the future.
Yeah. And your market's interesting because I would imagine, there are locals that you are working for, but there's also a lot of vacation homes, things like that you're servicing.
Yeah.
What is it like?
Well, what's the population that you're serving? I mean,
so it says that Steamboat Springs has like 13,000 full time, but that's full time. So during the winter time, that increases a lot, during ski weekends and whatnot. So, it's a ski town, it's a second hometown. So yeah, I mean, to your point, Khalil, like it's a mix of locals and also, wealthy second homeowners that, have a ski condo here.
Yeah. And even, property management companies or investors that have several properties for rental. But I think, as far as growing and, acquiring new customers, how much of it is marketing versus business development relationships that you have with the locals that are there? What is your strategy for acquiring new business that hasn't already been serviced by previous owners?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a mix of developing relationships with property managers, with realtors, with other contractors who are, doing new builds or who are, remodeling. So we have a really great network of other contractors that we work closely with. They may be doing the whatever, the cabinets and the painting or whatever, and then they come and contract us to do the flooring and the countertops. So we have a great network of contractors, great network of property managers, realtors, and then from the retail side, it's funny, like Steamboat Springs it's kind of like a sort of like an idyllic, like Hallmark Christmas town, if you know what I mean. It's kind of funny how like old school it is. Like we have like a local paper that like everyone reads, it's called the Steamboat Pilot.
Yeah.
Like we advertise in there. We do like local radio spots. We like sponsor the rodeo. Like there's a big rodeo circuit that comes into town here. So it's like it's a very interesting culture in the sense that it's like a very small town and people still view it that way, but it has a lot of affluence and money. So we contribute to those small town types of things and support the local community in that way. And so it's funny, like just through those things we get enough retail leads that I don't feel the need to go out and market more. Like we actually do pretty light marketing, but we still manage to stay really busy.
Yeah. And I saw one of your tweets that you got scammed on a advertisement. Is that right?
Yep.
Tell us that story.
Oh man, bringing up a bitter
yeah.
A lesson.
Yeah, no. So I mean, like someone, and this is like for being in a small town, like you get these calls and you think that people are, you assume that everyone is genuine and has your best interest at heart. So like someone called, they're like, hey, we're working with Steamboat High School, we're we're doing T-shirts for the football team. Are you interested in supporting? And so it's like, yeah, what? Sure, that's fine. $500, whatever. And so, I give them $500 and like I follow up. I just figured it happened, right? I didn't even think about it. And then, I've followed up with that for whatever reason. And then I found out like there's nothing here. Like there never was.
Never heard of them.
And and that happened twice. It actually, like, it must have been the same company, but they're like, oh yeah, we're
Same
advertising.
scammers.
Yeah, we're advertising in the local at the local golf club. It's like a public course. They're like, yeah, we're advertising at Steamboat Golf Club. We got a advertisement, on the ninth hole, scorecard or whatever. And are you interested? I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. And so I did it, and like again, like total scam. So, I mean,
Okay, so we can agree you're not going to do that a third time, right?
that's right. I've learned my lesson. So it sucks because like I want to be trusting, and I want to like support the local
Right.
community, and I want
Yeah.
to like give money to good causes. Like I said, like I do advertise with the rodeo, and like I go to the rodeo and I see my poster there, and they like shout out
Yeah.
Affordable Flooring Warehouse, so.
Yeah.
Like it worked for me prior to that, but like it just sucks that like those things are out there. So definitely be careful with local advertising.
If I can jump back just a little bit, I mean, kind of summarizing, you have two views of your business: the financial that you're doing. You've already done an acquisition, and then the operations. I asked earlier, how did your financial experience translate into operations from day to day? And you said pretty rough. And you mentioned specifically sales. What else did you go in and say, wow, that's not what I wasn't aware of this? I mean, culture types. What kind of other things jumped up in operations?
I mean, managing subs. I mean that's just tough, kind of like to your point earlier about like how people normally come up in these types of businesses, like they start off as like an installer or whatever, and then they kind of grow into the role. Like I didn't do that. I've laid floors once in my life, like just at my condo, so like I don't come from that world. I don't come from that background, and you're managing people that do, obviously, and so that was choppy for sure. To like they kind of looked at me sideways as if I'm just like some corporate stooge who's coming in here to like extract money out of them basically, and you just have to like earn their trust, earn their respect. I'm out there like literally I'm going to go do 8 carpet measures today and flooring measures, right? And so I'm out there looking at the job sites, doing the bids, and just like getting to know the guys and know their families and ask them about their lives. And that was kind of how I approached it, was with humility and just respect for what they do. So but again, like that was a uncomfortable sort of transition, going from very professional, polished people at Deloitte to the blue collar trades is a big transition. But what I've always known and respected is that these people work really hard, and they're like the backbone of our economy and our society, and they're the ones like out there hanging your drywall. They're the ones out there installing your carpet. And even though we think about them as some people, I should say, think about them as as a not respectable profession. Like it's just not true. Like these people are working hard, they're creating value, they're doing well for their families and their their communities, and they deserve all of our respect and admiration, probably more so than our corporate overlords.
Well said.
Man. Yeah, very well said. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Again, going back, man, you talked about working with SBA, and acquiring through some debt, not having to put up all your money. Let's walk through that. During COVID, there were some special things going on with the SBA, special programs. Is that something that you utilized? What is that process working like with the SBA? Let's just kind of go through that story.
Yeah. So the SBA was providing like loan assistance So for like during the pandemic, it was like basically, SBA debt demand, like everything else, fell off a cliff. And so they tried to, stimulate demand as part of like the stimulus packages by, writing off like $30,000 of your first 6 months payments, something like that, and waiving like their origination fees. So in order to like get an SBA loan, you normally have to pay a decent origination fee, but they waive that. So the timing, from my perspective, like couldn't have been better. Like
Couldn't have been better.
Yeah. So like I got a huge like for the first 6 months, or maybe it's 3 months. I got loan relief, waived origination fee, interest rates were low, and also just like the seller was like burned out, and he just wanted to get out, so it was just like a confluence of events that made the timing really great. And at the same time, of course, like everyone's staying at home, people are moving up to the mountains, they're buying second homes because they want to get out of the city, so it just like it was a great tailwind to like get myself immersed in this world. And so yeah, the SBA was a really great way for me to go. They lowered the requirements to like 10% down. So yeah, it was awesome. And
Did the seller finance any of it?
Yeah, he financed 10% of the purchase price.
10%. Okay,
Yep.
but he got a cash payment for the balance of the purchase price.
Yep. So I'm still paying him a monthly payment for the remaining amount that he financed.
And if it's confidential, don't say, but I think you already did. What kind of multiple? How did you arrive at the price? Like two times
Yeah, so
SDE,
basically, when I underwrote it, I underwrote it fairly conservatively. So I underwrote it to like 2.7 times SDE. And now that that's played out, it's been a little bit lower than that for, the last year and a half of run rate. So it's, kind of sitting at like that little bit less
because the SDE was higher than you thought?
Yeah.
Is that how it
So
winds
we
up
were able
being
to grow
low?
SDE. We're able to, yeah.
Well, this is a little bit in the weeds, but what did you get? Did you get all the inventory? Did you get accounts receivables? Seller kept the payables? I mean, what did you get when you bought it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, working capital is probably the stickiest part of a transition and a negotiation. So I paid for the inventory, and that was about it. So we basically did a clean cut. We did an asset sale. Basically, anything that was accounts receivable, accounts payable was his. And then I was able to get cash from the SBA. So like from day one, I had a decent amount of cash on the balance sheet, and then the inventory. So I was able to like use that to generate cash day one. So yeah, we didn't do like we basically did a split day one of the working capital.
Just for listeners too, you said you did an asset purchase as opposed to like buying the company, the stock. Could you say a little bit what that is, just real quickly? An asset
So there's
purchase.
two ways to do these deals. You can do an asset sale or you can do a stock sale. An asset sale is basically I'm buying the assets of the business and none of the liabilities. I am not responsible for anything that may or may not have happened in the past. I'm starting a whole new company. So basically, like, I'm buying your forklift, I'm buying your inventory, I'm buying your,
Name.
your goodwill.
Yeah.
I'm buying your, your inventory, and I'm starting a new company. And then, so that's an asset sale. So it's basically like you're dissolving your company, I'm starting a new company, I'm buying all of your assets, and we're moving forward. That's the cleanest way to do it. That's typically how these small business deals are done. And then there's a stock sale, which is basically like I'm buying, 50% of your business via stock. Like if you were to buy a share of Apple, right? and that's actually how I did the Granite House deal, was a stock sale. So we did not start a new business. I bought 50% interest in that business, and we did it as a stock sale.
And what's the vision for Granite House for yourself? Is it to remain 50%? Do you have plans later on to acquire the entire business? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's, keep it at 50%, just operate it. So it's a little bit tricky. Like the partner that I own it with is a manager at Affordable Flooring. So he's a key part of both businesses. So really, it's like he's we view Affordable Flooring as sort of like the crown jewel, and he's works in that. And so right now we're just going to keep it 50-50 and
Cool.
have it be a sort of a complementary piece to what we do at Affordable Flooring.
Very interesting. You get to be on both sides of like solo, 100% owner and a partnership, which are very different. But it's a little bit more interesting because the partner also works for you as a manager.
Hey, real quickly, did your manager already have a Granite House and you bought half, or did you buy it and he went up with half of it? As a
Yeah, he already had it. Yeah. So
okay.
So this is actually even trickier. So the seller, so the guy I bought Affordable Flooring from, his son worked at Affordable Flooring for about 9 months, and he owned half of Granite House, and so that's who I bought out at Granite House.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Man.
it's
Family businesses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, 50% partners too. Wow.
Yeah. Very interesting. Well, I want to get a little bit into your mindset of as far as like the KPIs that you're focused on day to day, because I have a feeling that they're probably maybe similar, but probably different than what most contractors would focus on day to day, just because of your background and because of the way that you've entered into this business. What are the things that you're really focused on day to day as the owner of your business?
I mean, I have it. It's pretty simple, honestly. Like I just have like a sort of like a financial model that I use. It's like it's sales growth, it's SDE, basically EBITDA. It's my debt multiple. So like how am I tracking against my my the debt obligations that I have for the business against the cash flow that's being generated. So it's really like it's SDE. It's my balance sheet. So like, how is working capital looking? Because there's a lot of working capital in this business between inventory and accounts payable and accounts receivable and cash and everything. So it comes down to working capital, SDE, and sales at the end of the day. And through those three metrics, I calculate my value creation. So like, I assume that I can sell this business for 2.5 times SDE, which is conservative. I think it might be able to get more. So I basically say, okay, how am I creating value over time? So I take that, my SDE times my multiple gives me my enterprise value. Then I look at my net debt, which is my long-term liabilities of my SBA loan and my seller note loan, minus my net working capital. So that's basically like, here's the net debt that I have in the business. And then that gets me to my equity value. And basically what I want to see is equity value grow over time. And then sales. So how am I growing sales from last year, from 2019, from 2018? And at the end of the day, like those three things are the bottom line things that I care about. And operationally, we want to make sure we're generating enough leads. We want to make sure we have enough carpet jobs, LVT jobs, wood jobs to keep the guys busy. So I have like kind of like a backlog of work to make sure that we've got like a steady amount of work that we're looking at. And that's more of an art than a science. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's all about growing equity value for me.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, I'm mightily impressed. The KPIs that you laid out where you're paying attention to value and cash flow and things like that. I just happen to know that many of our listeners and I mean this with love in my heart, but don't even know what that is. And that's why I'm asking you to define, SMB, by the way, small, medium business, right? I don't know if we said that, but your experience and you're articulate, and I think it's wonderful for people to hear that because that value can be, just because of a multiple, it can be so much greater than what you're looking at as profit, right? Profit's just one of the factors in a multiplication problem.
Yeah.
And anyway, you're just nailing it right down the line.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you.
Well, I mean, so many of the contractors out there are still focused on the sales revenue rather than the profit. They're just focused on that top line. They're bidding with bad margins or even at a discount and just trying to grow that top line rather than even thinking about what their multiple is or what their margins are or anything like that. I think while they may have a better grip on the day-to-day operations things at certain levels of being able to go measure the jobs and knowing how to tell the guy, delegate certain tasks and stuff like that, you're absolutely miles ahead of a lot of people and differentiated in that regard on the financial operations and the long-term view of the business. Something that you mentioned earlier was managing your employees and your subs. What are the challenges that you didn't expect coming into the business as far as having a culture and, managing people and being able to invest in them as people as well, not just employees or another number on the balance sheet? What is that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, during the transition, it's hard because, when you buy a company, you're not just buying cash flow, you're not just buying the forklift and blah, blah, blah. You're buying a culture, and the seller that I bought it from, I mean, he did an amazing job growing the business and building it into what it is. But, he was again, like you said, Martin, I have love in my heart for him, but, he was a kind of a surly, grumpy kind of guy. He was unhealthy. He had a lot of health problems the last couple of years. I mean, he was dealing with a lot of stuff, which caused the business and the sort of the vibe of the business to be not great at times, very, very frenetic, very disorganized at times. So walking into that sort of environment was extremely trying. So you kind of have to bring your own leadership and style and house style to the table, and over time slowly turn the ship around into a better, hopefully more positive direction. So, I just try to be myself. I try to, listen to people, understand where they're coming from, understand where, how this business was built from the ground up. So those first few months, I was in learning mode. I wanted to learn how this business got to where it is today. And then once I sort of wrap my head around that, okay, like that all makes sense. And I respect the past and what it took to get here, but we're now moving in this direction. And I want you to come with me on that direction. So, I would say that it was and it's still something that we struggle with, but it's something that you have to be very empathetic to. Change is really hard for people. It was the hardest thing that I experienced in my consulting world. People do not like change. You bring a new technology to the table, you bring a new way of doing things to the table, they don't like it. It's just the way it is. So change management requires a lot of empathy, requires a lot of respect of that person's background and where they come from and like their perspective on things. But you then have to, help them along, handhold them. Here's why we're implementing Notion. Here's why it makes sense. Here's why this is an important thing for the business. I know you don't like it right now, but just please trust me that I think this is going to be a positive thing for the business. And
I think it's obvious why you're succeeding at it. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a hard thing to do, but If you do it with empathy, kindness, and respect, then people usually come around. If you're truly delivering value. If you're an idiot and you're implementing changes for no reason and you're to the detriment of the business, then you probably deserve to be called out. But if you're actually doing a good job and doing your job right, then people will eventually see the merits of what you're talking about.
Yeah, we're big fans of 2 Second Lean by Paul Akers. Not sure if you've heard of that book, Lean Manufacturing. Yeah. Really great. I think you'd absolutely love it. But you had mentioned introducing change to employees. Are there any changes that you talked about empathy that you learned from employees and asked them what they thought might be better to be able to improve the business? And how did you approach that? What are some of the things that you might have changed that the previous owner wasn't willing to, but you are willing to as you listen to employees?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we were doing like our system, like our Notion implementation, right? Like, hey, like, tell me why the business was done this way. Does that make sense to you? Do you think like, was this, something that was inerrant? And, a lot of people, like my warehouse guys, they'd be like, I never really understood why this was done this way. So here's how I think it should go, And you're like, okay, cool, let's do that. Let's implement that. That makes sense to me. I understand your reason why you would be wrong. So, soliciting people's feedback and honestly just like getting to like the bare nuts and bolts of like how the business works, right? So like, let's take a step back. Let's like cut out all the madness for a second. Tell me how we should be receiving product in the warehouse, right? And then just step by step do it, literally put it in a flow chart. Like that's a consultant to me. Just get to the base brass tacks of how like a simple process should work, align on it, then go implement it in a thoughtful technology, So that's kind of how I approached it. And when you do that, when you kind of like take a step back from the craziness of the day to day and just solicit basic questions, you get a lot of illuminating answers.
Yeah, it's great. Before we wrap up here, I'd love to, you're building in public, you're actively growing and changing your business probably on a daily basis. What are the things that are coming up for you, Chris? What do you see happening the rest of this year? What are some areas of focus you have?
Oh man. Honestly, I need to area of focus is hiring. I need help. And that's something that I've struggled with, just now that I've kind of wrapped my head around this thing and I'm operating it in the weeds. I need help to like be able to take a step back. I just had my first kid.
Oh, congrats.
Yeah, thanks. So,
I saw your tweet on that, and you said some acquisitions are free, and I had to laugh. I said that isn't free. It's going to cost you for a long time, but worth it.
I got called out on that one pretty quick, So I want to be able to just have a little bit more free time and not be quite so stretched thin. So hopefully, stabilize things a little bit, take a step back from the business day to day by hiring. I have to focus on
Is it hiring a manager? What roles are you hiring?
Yeah, I mean, like a manager, general manager or an operations manager type of role. So that's something that I need because, right now our managerial bench is a little thin.
Yeah, and we always talk about working on the business and not in it, and I'm sure that you've been surprised by how much you've had to work in it since you acquired. Yeah. Okay, so working on hiring.
Yeah, that's a focus. I have to be able to. I have to get better at delegating. I have to get better at training and finding more managers. So that's the focus, and my wife will be very happy to hear my answer there.
Yes, she will. Absolutely. Along those lines, hiring, and I think it's a busy time. It's been a busy time for a lot of contractors, but as the climate changes in the markets, there's a lot of talk about housing recession. Where are your views on that? How do you see it impacting you and Steamboat?
It's hard to say. I think that sort of the mantra of recession here in Steamboat is that Steamboat's always hit a year late. So if there is a recession, we're kind of shielded from the initial stages of it for about a year until it really hits us. So I'm hoping that that's true. Steamboat, I mean, like already the data is coming in. Like housing sales are down 30% from last year. I think that the rising the rising of interest rates are already having pretty strong effects on the housing market. But that said, like I still think that we've got a couple of years of runway to stay busy and to continue to do quite a bit of work. So it's hard for me to say, but I think that I'm hopeful that we can quote unquote have a little bit of a soft landing, but we'll see. It's really hard for me to forecast, but right now it's clearly showing up in the data, and I'm hopeful that we can ride it out as best we can for at least another year or two.
Well, Chris, this has been an awesome conversation. Just a different approach and a different perspective to a lot of things that we talk about frequently on this podcast. Everything from how you acquire customers, how you started your business, how you're growing your business, the things that you're tracking on a day-to-day basis. Really appreciate your insight, your willingness to be open and transparent about so much of your business. And I'm excited to see you grow. Where can people find you? Twitter is a big one. And you have a holding company, is that right?
Yeah. Reach out to me on Twitter. My handle is Toph, TOPH_Edwards.
Okay.
And
we'll put that in the show notes.
And my email, if I'm happy to talk to any listeners and give my perspective or help out however I can. My email is chris@sanitasequity.com, SANITAS equity.com.
Awesome. Chris, thanks for being on. Excited for your journey. Congrats on being a dad. And I hope that you're able to find somebody there in the last part of this year.
Yeah, thanks guys. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, see ya.
Hey, Cashflow Contractors. Hope that you enjoyed that episode with Chris Edwards. Thank you so much, Chris, for being on. An incredible perspective for our listeners to understand the other side of being a contractor, the finance side at a very high level. Obviously, really cool to see how he thinks about his business, and I hope that it's transforming the way that you think about your business, and hopefully will allow you to be a contractor that has less stress, more time, and more money in a real feasible way. Go check out Chris on Twitter. We've got his stuff in the show notes. And again, share with your peers, anybody in the industry, and follow us on social media. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon.